Hi, this is Nikki with Nikki Sweets and Adornments. Why don't you come and make a cute little baby elephant topper with me? Let me go over the materials that you'll need for this project. To make the elephant, I always use something called modeling paste, and I use this instead of fondant just because it holds up a little bit better so your figures don't look like they're sinking. And I have my modeling paste here. I've already dyed it with the different colors. So I have this Color Mill black, and I started with white and I just added a little bit. You can always add more, but just kind of go slow because you don't want the gray to be too dark. And then I just have a tiny little piece where I added more black, so it's a very, very dark gray. Alternatively, you could use black, and that's just for the eyebrows here. There was one time that I started with a black modeling paste, and it must have had a purple tinge to it because it looked okay the day I made it, and then actually a few days later it started kind of turning a purple shade. So I stopped doing that, and I usually just go to the Color Mill black and dye it that way. I like using these sugar pearls for the eyes. And then I have several tools here. This is called a Dresden tool, and I just use it for the little creases. I have a toothpick for the body for stability. I have an X-Acto knife or scalpel. I have several balling tools, and I'll show you how I use those later. This is actually a flower veiner, but funny enough, it actually has a little U shape, and it's perfect for the little toes in the elephant. And then I have a couple brushes. I use this for my petal dust here. This is from Petal Crafts, and it comes in a palette, and the pink one I just use to kind of dust the cheeks. And if you want, this is optional. You can use some black and just to go in the creases just to give it a little bit more definition. And over here I have my palette. It has water in it, and that's just going to act as my glue. You can also use edible glue, but I tend not to do that because I always have water in hand. It's free, and the edible glue dries a little bit faster, but I always make these several days just so they're nice and sturdy anyway, so I'm not too concerned about that. And I have my food grade brush. I'm just going to use this to act as glue, and I'm going to glue my pieces together with the brush and the water. I also have cornstarch in a pouch, and if my modeling paste ever gets kind of sticky, I can just dust it, and then it will help with just getting sticky on my hands. I like to weigh my figures because when I'm dyeing, I don't want to dye too much and I have a lot of excess waste, and sometimes you dye it in a color that's kind of hard to reuse. So it's nice to weigh everything, and that way I know I'm not going to dye too much. Let's start making the body of the elephant. I have 50 grams right here. And the total weight for the elephant in the light gray is 152, but I'll link all of the weights below in the comments. And when I first take it out of my bag, the modeling paste can be just a little bit stiff, so I'm just going to knead it a little bit first. Once I feel like it's nice and pliable, I'll start rolling it into a ball. And when I'm rolling it, I actually push both sides of my hands pretty firm so I can get all the creases out. I'm just going to take a look to see how I'm doing with the creases. Now, once I have a nice ball, I'm going to take my hands and kind of do this at an angle. We're looking to kind of get more of a cone shape. And I also want the bottom to be flat so it'll be nice and sturdy. So we're going for a shape about like that. And we can compare it to our other elephant. I think that looks good. I'm going to take my toothpick and I'm just going to twist kind of like this. almost to the bottom. And then my head's gonna go up here. I'm gonna move on to the front legs. Each of those are 9 grams. I'm just gonna start by doing the same thing where I'm just kind of kneading it, make sure it's pliable. I'm gonna start with a ball, pressing down so I get rid of the creases. And the same thing with this one. Okay. Now I'm gonna take both my hands and I'm gonna kind of do the same with the angle where my hands are further out on this side and closer in on this side. We're going to make kind of a tapered log like this. So my hands are kind of in this motion. Now, elephants always have the bottoms of their feet are flat. So in order to do that, I'm just going to press into my mat. I have this great nonstick mat where I can cut on it and it doesn't stick. It works really well. You see how that's nice and flat now? So I'm just taking it, kind of pushing, using the mat to help me make it nice and flat. Now in this elephant, I have these little creases that just kind of make it look like it's folding. And so I'm going to do the same kind of creases. On each side. And then I'm going to take my flower veining tool. And remember I told you before that this is going to be a U. I'm going to do 3 little toes. And the U is actually upside down when I'm pushing it into the modeling paste. See how that gives me 3 little toes on that side? And then I did the same thing on the other side. So now I'm going to glue these on like this. Let's move on to the back legs. Each back leg has 7 grams of modeling paste. I'm going to knead it first, like before, and then I'm going to start with a ball. And then I'm going to do another tapered log. Now I'm noticing that my modeling paste is kind of sticking a little bit, so this is where I would take my cornstarch and just dust it a little bit. Okay, so we have 2 tapered logs that are about the same size. Now I'm going to do the same thing where I want to flatten the bottom to make that nice elephant foot. And my back legs are going to kind of be in this kind of shape around the body. I'm going to take my Dresden tool and I'm also going to make few lines just to make it look a little more realistic. See how those lines kind of make it look just like it's curving in like that? And I'm going to take my flower veining tool again, and I'm going to put 3 little toes. Okay, I'm going to glue the back legs. Now we can move on to the head. For the head, I have 60 grams of modeling paste. Good to make sure that it's nice and kneaded. And then I'm going to start rolling it, pushing really hard down on the top and the bottom to get all the creases out. Okay, I think I'm happy with this. There's not a lot of creases. There's one kind of subtle one here, but I'm actually going to use it where the trunk is so you won't even notice. I'm going to actually start pulling out the trunk like this. So this is going to be my head, and then this is going to be my trunk. And I kind of like it how it comes out and kind of curves. So I know I'm going to need to keep doing this until I get about that length for the trunk. Just getting a little sticky. And I'm just taking my finger and doing this so there's kind of a definition between the face and the trunk. And then also I'm just kind of flattening just a little bit so it's not quite so rounded here. I'm going to take my balling tool and I'm just going to push at the end right here, and that kind of gives the illusion that it's hollow. See how that works? And also what I can do is I can take my Dresden and I can kind of give some lines where there's a crease and maybe a little line here where the trunk is. Now I'm going to take a smaller balling tool and I'm just going to put some little indentations where I want the eyes. And I kind of think about coming, the eyes are just a little bit above the trunk, maybe about a little less than halfway down the face. And I'm just going to put a little bit of water into the holes. Don't put a lot of water because with these pearls, they can actually bleed a little bit if you put too much. And believe it or not, they can be different sizes. So I always just kind of look at several of them just to find 2 sizes that are the same. And I'm just going to put these where the indents are. Now I want to make these little tiny eyebrows. So I have some darker gray. I just dyed the modeling paste just a little bit darker with a little bit more of this color. So I want a very thin piece. It's sticking a lot, so I'm just going to use some more cornstarch. I'm going to take my X-Acto knife, cut one of the eyebrows. If I'm not using the modeling paste, I always try to put it back in the bag so that it doesn't dry out. I'm going to put a little bit of water where I want the eyebrows. So I just give it a little bit of space. You see how the eyebrow comes about there? I tend to kind of like the eyebrows a little bit curved so they look happy. Now I'm going to do these 3 little tufts for the hair. And those are kind of similar to how I did the eyebrows. I'm almost going to make little tapered logs, almost like we did for the arms and the legs, but much smaller. So that's one. Put a little bit of water. I'm going to do 2 more like that. To make my ears, I'm going to need 10 grams of modeling paste. And I'm going to roll it into a ball at first. And I'm just going to flatten the ball. I'm going to take my biggest rolling ball tool and I'm just trying to make it so there's a little bit of a rim on the edge. And I'm making more of a rim kind of on the top than on the bottom. So I want it to look about like that. Once it looks like that, I'm going to cut it in half. And now I have my 2 ears. I'm going to take my Dresden tool. I just want to put a few little lines. just to look like it's kind of bent. So you'll see my ear goes on like this. I'm just going to take a little bit of water. So I put water on this side. And when I put it on, it's actually a little bit curved. And you can kind of manipulate it to make it look how you want it to. I'm going to use my colors in my palette here. Sometimes these colors can come on a little bit strong, so what I typically do is I'll put some on my brush and then maybe just kind of dab a little off on the paper towel. And wherever the cheeks would be, I'm just going to add a little bit of blush. The dusts are almost like the colors where, you know, you can always add more, but it's a little bit harder to take it off. So it's better to kind of start off slow and then add more if you need to. And then if you want, this is optional, and so is the blush actually. Just add a little bit of black. If you add it, it might not be hard to see on the camera, but if you add it into these creases, it'll just accentuate them a little bit more. And I could even go and do that on the arms and legs as well. I'm going to add some water to my body here. Then I'm going to add my head on. Okay, I think I'm done with my elephant. What do you think?